Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 6th episode of Phenomenal Woman Wednesdays. I am your host, Dr. Sharon Reed. Thank you for joining. Welcome to Power 365 Phenomenal Woman Wednesdays. This podcast will address issues ranging from what is a phenomenal woman? Are you enough? Community service, paying it forward, the manifestation of dreams with words and action, the power in being a woman, the men who support phenomenal women, fashion, and much more. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back to Phenomenal Woman Wednesdays. So if you haven't had an opportunity, please go back and listen to episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Last week, I talked about the natural hair journey and the perception of natural hair trending. Please go back and check that out. There's some really interesting information and my thoughts on what I think about that. And today I have the pleasure of entertaining Mrs. Sharon Reed. She is a beautiful woman, has lived here in Orange County for 41 years, married for 36 years, mother of 3, has also worked as a flight attendant for 32 years, and she brings with her a wealth of information about balancing career, family, and the challenges that come along with raising children while still maintaining and nurturing her marriage. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And so I'm going to start off with the very first question that I ask all of my guests, which is, for you, what is a phenomenal woman?
I think a phenomenal woman is someone who is first comfortable in their own skin, comfortable with their shortcomings and their strengths, but recognizing that they were created uniquely by God and for a purpose.
Wonderful. Yeah, so just being authentic. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a common theme here on this show, authenticity. And so if you reflect back on your own life, who are the phenomenal women that you recall that served, that provided that example of being a woman?
Right. Well, first off, I'd have to start off with my mom. She was a homemaker. During the early 60s, she was also someone who took in laundry. We grew up on the south side of Chicago, so she would often do laundry for the people that were better off, I guess, more wealthy. But at the same time, she was always at home there for us after school if we needed help with homework. Or she always made breakfast first thing in the morning, and she always made sure we had a good dinner at night and was there for us whenever we needed her. That was her main thing, I think, was just to be there for us, raising her kids.
Oh, that's awesome. I know, as we've progressed as women, we sometimes lose sight of the value in being able to provide that. So that's amazing that you had that example and had someone really providing that nurturing and that day-to-day care. So that is awesome. The other question that I have for you is, what has been your greatest challenge thus far in all of your experiences? I mean, you have so many, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what would you say has been your greatest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
I think my greatest challenge has just basically been to celebrate where I'm at. Even in difficulties, it seems like there's been a purpose for them, and I've learned to grow out of those purposes or to find out what was I supposed to get, what lesson I was supposed to get out of each situation. And so when difficulties come, instead of being overwhelmed by them, I've started to stop and think, okay, what's the lesson that I'm supposed to receive in this? And then trying to do whatever I'm supposed to do while in the situation and still maintain and grow.
It's so difficult.
It is.
And being able to identify that for yourself and really be able to adhere to that is really awesome. Yeah, and it is a challenge.
It is.
Especially, because we tend to want to retreat and we start to feel, have a little bit of a pity party.
Oh,
in the
absolutely,
midst of it.
absolutely.
But then being able to pull on that strength is awesome. So I just want to share a little bit with the listeners how I met you.
Okay.
And so I was moving to Orange County, and I was kind of canvassing neighborhoods and trying to figure out where I wanted to live. And I saw your sister walking down the street, and she just seemed friendly enough. So I pulled over and I started chatting with her, and she was telling me about the area, and then she asked me, "Do you have a church home?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm just going to be moving to the area." So she invited me to the church, and that's when I met all of you. And I've always observed you in church and from afar. And here in Orange County, being African American, the social network is kind of tight. So
Yes.
Just based upon some other memberships to other organizations and things that our children have also participated in, I've seen you in those environments as well. And the thing that stood out to me in my observation of you is that you always seem to be so proud of your family. Very proud of your family, and not necessarily with anything that you said. It was just your presence and your disposition when you're with your kids, the tenderness that I've seen you display with them and your interactions with them, and even with your husband. He's always he's very friendly and respectful, and just as a family, I've always admired you as a unit.
Thank you.
And so one particular instance that stood out for me was when we were attending an event, and our kids were younger, and your daughter, she was a teenager at the time.
Right.
Beautiful, such a beautiful girl. And I noticed that her belly was a little round.
That's right.
and so I think you noticed me notice.
Right.
And you said, "Yeah, we're having a baby."
Right.
And it was so matter of fact, and I never really got a chance to tell you, but I admired how you didn't shame you didn't shame her. It was a thing that you guys were dealing with as a family.
Absolutely.
And now fast forward, she is flourishing, married with 3 babies, and just a beautiful family. And I think that has a lot to do with the foundation and the support you provided her. So I wanted to ask you, one of the things that I wanted to explore with you is how did you, when you were faced with that, and albeit a blessing, it is a challenge.
Huge.
When you're dealing with your young baby and she's going to be a mommy, and all that comes with that, and the level of responsibility and whatnot. How did you manage that, and how did you come to a place where you were able to, be in the moment and be proud and still be able to support her openly?
Right. Well, I think my initial response was tears. I was overwhelmed just for the fact that, she was 17 years old, just graduated from high school, and we had these visions of her going off to college and just doing these wonderful things, and all of a sudden, she's now going to be a mom. And I knew what challenges I had to face when I became a mom. And I was 30 when I first became a mom, so it was a different world for me. And I had been married for 8 years when I first became a mom. But here she was, this young child who had to deal with this. But we knew that there were going to be different people putting seeds of, depression or just with a different outlook. And we wanted her to experience it in a positive environment. So after my husband and I talked about it, we went into her room. She was no longer a little girl, so we completely redid her room and changed it into an adult's room with an adult's bed and all this great stuff. And we just slowly but surely started to minister to her. And we ministered to her by painting her room bright yellow. We knew that there were going to be some sad moments for her. And we put bright white borders on it, and we gave her our original bed, which was a white wrought iron and brass bed. We put that in her room. And by us dealing with it that way, by physically doing something for her, it helped us deal with some of our own personal hurts in it. My husband was also involved in the ministry at this time. So, of course, everybody was watching at us, seeing how we would respond to this. And it's almost as if God said, love her through it. And so that's what we did. We loved her through it. And other people came alongside and they joined in. And then there were those that were naysayers and kind of pushed her aside. But it didn't even matter. We just figured they had some growing up to do. Mm-hmm. And so as a family, I remember my son, the youngest, was 13 at the time. And he looked at us at one point. He said, "Mommy, I think we're loving each other more." I'm like, "What do you mean, Joshua?" He said, "This thing with Allie is hard. But what I'm seeing is more and more love. We're surrounding one another." And I think as moms, that's what we have a tendency to do. We circle the wagons around our kids. And that's basically what we did with Allie. And we were so blessed with the baby. My husband, we laugh and talk, and though it was a difficult time going through that period, he said that he could not imagine his world without his grandbaby. Mm. So God has a way of just balancing it all out and making us a blessing, you know. Wow. So for us, it was a good thing.
That's awesome. I mean, especially with what I'm hearing you say about understanding that there would be potentially seeds of depression.
Absolutely.
And heading them off by already providing an environment that would help take her out of that.
Absolutely.
That is, to have that insight is really incredible. And also still be dealing with your emotional,
personal,
pull
right.
with the situation and whatnot. So you mentioned also about the naysayers.
Yes.
I think that a lot of time when we are dealing with our own personal challenges and just life in general, there's always going to be, you can depend on them.
Absolutely.
You can always depend on them more than than on the other side sometimes, right. Those that are supporters. But they're going to be there.
Absolutely.
And so is there anything that you would recommend for someone who might be facing a challenge, maybe like this one, or any challenge where the naysayers appear, right. And just really being able to deflect that energy? Because what I'm hearing you say is that you and your husband teamed up and basically deflected any Absolutely. Negativity that was going to be coming your way, right. And towards your daughter, right. And your grandchild. And so, how would you say you would recommend someone to rally that type of positive energy?
Well, for us, I think it was fairly easy for us, merely because we were in the Word, we were in our Bible. And there's so much in there that I guess they're weapons in a way that you can use against the enemy, because basically you're dealing with an enemy. Anyone
right.
who wants to spill poison or hatred or anything your way, that's an enemy. And see, God is love. And so he basically, his word teaches us how to go through those difficulties. He says in Jeremiah 29 that I know the thoughts that I have towards you for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. When you hear things about that from the Creator, it helps you to walk in light, I guess, or to walk in his goodness and to walk in his mercy. And then you know that you have an enemy, but you keep them at bay with the word. And so that's what's always worked for us, So we stand on the word, I guess, basically. So for those that believe in him, there's hope. And for those that don't, there's still hope. He wants to have a relationship with all of us, So, I guess it's just something you have to choose to tap into.
So that's your armor.
That's my armor.
Yeah. So, and it's consistent, right? So
Absolutely.
Doesn't fail.
Exactly.
So, in that rallying that you did between you and your husband, and right. You have your toolbox, yeah. And your tools that you have utilized from the Word.
Yeah.
And did you experience any pull on your marriage when you
Huge.
were really, trying to support your daughter at the same time?
Initially, the thought came to mind, can my marriage survive this? See, it's different when you're dealing with two adults, my husband and myself, and we're dealing with our own stuff. But then when my husband found out that she was pregnant, he was upset with her, and he was upset with me because I was the mother. There were things I was supposed to do to take care of all of this. And so it was really difficult. But I think as he watched me deal with my daughter, he decided to come alongside. And that's when his healing took place. So, but yeah, it was definitely a difficult time.
Yeah. So when you're, I know just from my own experience, when you are going through a circumstance that is difficult,
Right.
and each of you is going through it together, right, but also separately.
Absolutely.
And maybe sometimes one of you, and we'll say you at this point because that's what we're talking about is the right situation. Right. You were maybe a little further along right in how you had accepted it.
Absolutely.
And you were just, you put, as moms, I think that is kind of in us to do, like right, you put your child first. Like, okay, I'll deal with myself, but right, I have to be here. I have to demonstrate for her that it's going to be okay. I have to right give her this confidence.
Right.
And so, so your husband had to catch up.
He did, but I prayed during that time, and God took care of the rest. But I also had to remember that He was watching me, so I couldn't really have a moment in front of Him anyway.
I see.
I still had my moments, but they were in private, and they were between me and God. And so whenever I presented myself to Him, I was stronger. It's like He almost gave me all that I needed in order to help encourage my husband in going through this also.
Wow, that's awesome. Because I think that when, we're dealing with those kinds of situations, and what I'm hearing you say is you were dealing with it privately.
Absolutely.
But you didn't say I was dealing with it by myself.
No, never alone.
And that's very powerful, Sharon, because so many times you feel alone, but it doesn't sound like you ever felt alone because of your relationship with
Absolutely.
God, right? So because of the relationship you have, even if your husband or whomever is not able to be with you and support in that moment, you still have the Father.
You still trust
right?
Him.
So you still have Him.
Right.
So you have your strength in Him.
Yeah, it's grounded in Him.
Yeah. That's really that.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, like I told you I'm a crier, so I get it. But that is really powerful to me because just in my own life, I've had moments where I have felt alone in those moments, and I think we forget that we're not.
We're not. He promised He'd never leave us or forsake us.
That's amazing. So and so anyhow, when you're in communion with God, and He's fortifying you,
absolutely,
and keeping you. He's keeping you while you're working through it, and providing a foundation for you to support and demonstrate for your daughter what being a woman looks like.
Yes.
And your husband is going through his own transition to really get to the place where he can accept with you.
Absolutely.
And would you say, so did that process happen before you started painting the room and whatnot, or was it through that period of time?
For him, it happened during the time that we started taking the room apart.
Okay.
We started painting. All of a sudden, it just seems like a weight was lifted from him, as he started to do these things for her. And I started to notice that he became, a little bit more lighter, I guess, in the relationship with her. And he was able to sit and talk with her, and he was able to love on her. But that had to take place for him.
Wow.
I guess men are more physical, so they have to be doing something. So this was perfect. And by no means did I just have this brainstorm or anything. It just, I don't know. It just seemed natural.
Yeah. I'm going to go out and get some paint. Get some paint, some brushes, and some hammers, and some nails. Oh, wow. I get it. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Thank you so much for being transparent with that. No problem. So you've been working as a flight attendant for 32 years, right? And your oldest child is 29.
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been married for 36 years.
Right.
So these things, these three parts of you have been a constant,
Yes.
pretty much, right?
Definitely.
So you've been balancing your career with your marriage and with your kids.
Absolutely.
And your relationship with God, because
Absolutely.
that takes work. Just
Yeah,
like a
does.
marriage,
Yeah,
it takes
does.
work, because it takes work to exercise your faith and be in communion with God, to really put the time aside, because it's a discipline.
Yes, it is.
Right? Because I mean I'll be honest with you, there are times when I've fallen off and I don't take the time out on the daily to really have dedicated communication with him. Like, it might be throughout the day or whatnot, but like dedicated time where okay, this is our time, we're gonna chat, let's tune in, you know. And so as a wife, a mother, and balancing a career, what would you say, what advice would you give other women who are in that position, who are frustrated, feeling that they're not doing it good enough, just feeling that they're falling short, because they're pulled by their career, and something like this might come up, or any other challenge might come up, and just really trying to be present for your family, but still be able to perform in your career and give that what it needs.
Right. Well, we're not perfect beings, and so we can't necessarily do everything at 100%. Something's gonna lose a little bit over here or a little bit over there. But I think it's important that you make first things first. For me, sometimes I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm spending time in my Word, and it could be a devotional that's maybe 15 minutes. But it always seems like it gives me just enough. I'm starting the day talking with the Father, and therefore I'm starting off with a good foot, okay? And so it makes it a little bit easier. I'm not so much concerned about the other things. They all just kind of fall in place, I guess. But then there are times when I don't get up and at that time, and then I find myself dragging. And I'll look back and say, okay, what's wrong with this day? And then I'll have one of those aha moments, and I'll go back, okay, Lord, I haven't spent time with you.
Yeah.
And then so I have to separate myself, and I do that. But, we're not going to do everything perfectly. We weren't meant to. And we have to be okay with that, We just do the best we can. We go through the day. We drop some balls along the way. Yeah. We hit some home runs, and that's great. But it's all right. It's okay. It's not meant to be perfect.
Yeah. So you give yourself permission
to blow it. Yeah, absolutely. And it's all right.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
I know, when I was in the midst of having to, I have a career, but I manage it differently now. I made some shifts along the way, just based on some other things that were going on, just trying to be being sandwiched between being a wife and a mom and a daughter. My parents were very sick and whatnot, so I had some decisions that I had to make.
Right.
And so even now, I find it challenging to stay balanced, but more so back then when I was having to, manage that career path. And I certainly had plenty of times where I questioned whether I was doing it right. Yeah. It was like, oh, I'm killing it at work. Okay, but gosh, I wish I could be over here with the kids, or this is amazing. I'm leaving work to go and attend the event at school because that's my number one priority. I'm trying to be there, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm not fully present because I'm thinking, when I get back there, I'm going to have to deal with this call. I got to get on this meeting, and I'm already thinking about planning ahead about what's ahead of me. Right. So in the moment, I'm not really in the moment. Yeah. So it's like I never felt quite 100% anywhere because I was always kind of somewhere else dealing with the other
juggling
things.
all the other things.
Yeah. So I think giving yourself permission to not be perfect is excellent advice.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful. Okay. So you know, when I think of a flight attendant, I mean, it's just like this glamorous career, and everyone is beautiful, and she certainly fits the bill. Like,
Oh my
she's
goodness.
like beautiful, tall, and beautiful skin, and beautiful hair, and perfect, and, but yeah, that image is like this really chic woman who's traveling the world, and it's so exciting. And so, is it that way?
Okay, it is not that way for me. It's funny. I see myself on the plane, and I'm doing my job, but I find that it's more of a job of servitude. I don't see the glamour behind it. I find myself helping people. Sometimes I'm helping a 300-pound, 6'3" guy who's afraid of flying, and I may be sitting beside him and just talking to him, or I might be helping some little old lady who's going to bury her daughter, and so we'll have those moments, or having a conversation with an Orthodox Jewish man, and he's breaking up his orange to share it with me, and sharing food for them is a huge thing, and so I'm having relationships basically on the plane with these different people. Part of it is the fact that I'm serving them, but I also care about them. So for me it's different. It's not glamorous at all to me. I mean, I love being on the layover, but when I'm on the plane, I feel that's where I'm doing my best work.
Wow.
So it's different for me.
That is super. Like, I hope everybody's listening. That is a huge nugget. That is like awesome information, because what I'm hearing you say is that you have this career, but we're always taught that anything you do, it should be in service to the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so you think of a flight attendant, so the way that I described it, right? It's just so glamorous, and you're just this jet setter, and you're going from country to country, and exotic, and you're like, no, I'm there in ministry, I'm there in service.
Absolutely.
I'm always in service.
Absolutely.
And that is all. I never even thought about what role a flight attendant would have for someone going to bury their daughter.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of course they would need that, especially, I'll share with you, my neighbor went on vacation, and they were getting ready to start their family. And I always think about this kind of thing. So now there's a connection here. They were going to start their family, and they went to, I think, Bali, and he drowned. He drowned, and she had to come home alone.
By herself.
So how important it would be to have someone who cared and understood what to say,
right,
how to minister to her. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Sharon.
Yeah, I've had some interesting relationships along the way, and so it's been really, I don't know, there have been some pretty powerful things, like even sharing something. I had a young man who was leaving his family, and he was getting ready to go to Afghanistan. He was in the military, and I used to be the room mom, and so one of my teachers gave me this little angel, little silver angel. It was like a coin, and so I gave him that to use and just to keep with him. And so it's like, I don't know, it's different. It's different. It's definitely service. And I love that part of it. Being off the plane, traveling and going through the city, that's all fun and all. That's great. But being on the plane is when I enjoy it the most.
Wow.
And it's not work then.
Yeah, so it's not work. So
no.
You actually are enjoying.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah. So it's not like just, and I think that's so important. Like when you begin to feel like it's just movement.
Right.
You're counting widgets for dollars.
Right.
It's no longer
it's
serving you. Or
right.
right.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. So if you're able to do something that really makes you feel, that fortifies you, you're able to also be of service, and you're happy.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's just like that. You have that's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for joining me today and participating in this interview.
Thank you.
I feel so blessed because, like I said, I have always seen you. I've known you for years, but I've gotten to know so much more about you today. And I just learned that you were a flight attendant, like maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And so now I have a different appreciation for even your role, like being on the plane and
Right.
being in need, and that would be the person that would, God willing,
Yeah.
if I were ever in a situation where I needed support on a flight, um, I would pray to have someone who was,
Thank you.
like you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Enjoy.
you. Thank you for tuning in to Power 365 Phenomenal Woman Wednesdays. I believe that every woman gifts the universe with her own strengths and unique characteristics, simply because she is born the universe benefits. Every woman is growing, learning, and evolving. On this channel, only positive seeds are sown, no matter how flawed the soil. Take care and have a phenomenal Wednesday.